Here's the big question that's going to drive our whole journey today. How did a sovereign, internationally recognized Pacific kingdom with its own unique culture and traditions end up as America's 50th state? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's a journey of unification, collision, and transformation that stretches across centuries. To really unpack all of this, here's how we'll do it. We'll start with ancient Hawaii, then watch as the kingdom is born. We'll see what happens when new worlds collide, leading to the monarchy's overthrow. Then we'll cover the path to statehood. And finally, try to get our heads around the complicated legacy that's still very much alive today.
Okay, first things first, we have to go back, way back, to a time when Hawaii was really a world of its own. For centuries, before any Europeans showed up, it was this isolated but incredibly sophisticated Polynesian society, with its own deeply held beliefs about law, religion, and social order. Life was governed by something called the kapu system. And this wasn't just a set of guidelines. It was a sacred, strict code of conduct that touched every single part of life. We're talking everything from religious ceremonies to fishing rites, and even rules that said men and women couldn't eat together. It was the absolute bedrock of their society, and breaking a kapu, that could literally get you a death sentence. And their society was organized in this really brilliant way around these land divisions called ahupua'a. Just picture these wedge-shaped slices of an island, running all the way from the mountaintops right down to the ocean. This system was genius because it made sure every single community was self-sufficient. They had access to everything they needed: timber and fresh water from the mountains, farmland in the middle, and all the resources of the ocean at the coast. And this society had a very clear structure. At the absolute top, you had the Ali Nui, the High King, who was seen as pretty much a living god. Right below him were the royal nobles and the powerful priests, or kahuna. The vast majority of people, though, were the maka'aina, the commoners who did the work. And then at the very bottom were the kawa, a class of outcasts. For centuries, the islands were a patchwork of territories ruled by different chiefs. But that was all about to change, thanks to the rise of one of the most incredible leaders in Pacific history, Kamehameha I. Now, uniting the islands was a long and often bloody ordeal. It kicked off in 1782 with a civil war after a ruling chief died. Over the next 30 years, Kamehameha used a mix of brilliant military tactics and, crucially, European weapons to conquer the islands one by one. It all came to a head at the famous Battle of Nuuanu. By 1810, when the last island of Kauai peacefully joined him, he'd done it. He'd achieved the impossible and united all the Hawaiian Islands into a single, powerful kingdom. But at the very same time the kingdom was being built, a new and irreversible chapter was beginning. The arrival of outsiders would bring massive changes and new pressures that would end up reshaping Hawaii forever. The big moment came in 1778. The British explorer Captain James Cook, on his third trip across the Pacific, became the first European to make documented contact with the islands. And while his arrival was peaceful at first, it marked the end of Hawaii's long isolation from the rest of the globe. Just to give you some perspective, before this contact, historians estimate that the native Hawaiian population was somewhere around 300,000 people. This was a thriving, self-sustaining society that had been there for centuries. But this collision of worlds, it turned out to be absolutely devastating. Native Hawaiians had no immunity to foreign diseases, and things like measles and influenza just ripped through the population. I mean, just look at this chart. The decline was catastrophic. By the 1890s, the population had plummeted by almost 90%. At the very same time, a totally new economic system was taking hold. American missionaries and businessmen started setting up huge sugar plantations. This slide really shows you the massive shift. The old way of life, based on subsistence farming and the ahupua'a system, was being replaced by a new economy driven by private land ownership and huge cash crops for export. This made a small group of foreign landowners incredibly rich and completely changed the relationship between the Hawaiian people and their land. And as you might guess, all that growing economic power soon turned into political power. And that leads us to the most dramatic and controversial event in Hawaii's history, the overthrow of its own monarchy. So how did this happen, right? How could an independent kingdom that had treaties and was recognized by nations all over the world be toppled so fast? Well, the first major blow came in 1887. A group of non-Hawaiian businessmen, backed by their own militia, basically forced King Kalakaua to sign a new constitution at gunpoint. It became known as the Bayonet Constitution. It completely stripped the king of most of his power, and critically, it put in these strict property requirements for voting that kicked most Native Hawaiians off the voter rolls. It was a massive power grab by foreign business interests. The breaking point finally came in 1893. The new ruler, Queen Liliuokalani, tried to put a new constitution in place, one that would restore power to the monarchy and give voting rights back to her people. But a small group of 13 powerful men, calling themselves the Committee of Safety, decided to put a stop to it. They moved to depose her and get rid of the monarchy for good. And here's the thing, they didn't do it alone. At their request, 162 armed U.S. Marines from the USS Boston landed in Honolulu. Now, they never fired a single shot, but their presence was the deciding factor. Their official mission was to protect American lives, but what this show of force really did was paralyze the Queen's royal guards. Unwilling to risk a war with the United States, the monarchy was left completely unable to defend itself. And with the Queen placed under house arrest, the Kingdom of Hawaii was gone. A provisional government took over, and the long, complicated journey towards becoming an American state began. The road from that overthrow to actual statehood took decades. In 1898, the U.S. went ahead and annexed Hawaii, making it an official territory. Its strategic importance was tragically proven in 1941 with the attack on Pearl Harbor. During World War II, the all-Japanese-American 442nd Regiment, which came mostly from Hawaii, proved its loyalty beyond a shadow of a doubt, becoming the most decorated unit in U.S. military history. Finally, after years and years of debate, Hawaii was admitted as the 50th state in 1959. But becoming a state wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. The events of the last century or so left behind a really profound and complicated legacy that continues to shape Hawaii's identity to this very day. If you look at the time, the push for statehood was massive. The 1959 referendum shows that over 93% of Hawaii's voters chose to become a state. For a lot of people, it meant equality, economic opportunity, and finally getting to fully participate in American democracy. But that's not the whole story. A century after the overthrow, in 1993, the United States Congress passed what's known as the Apology Resolution. It officially acknowledged the U.S. government's role in the illegal overthrow of the kingdom and apologized for taking away the right of Native Hawaiians to self-determination. So you have these two powerful and, you could say, conflicting realities that exist side by side. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. For Hawaii, what does it actually mean to be a state that carries with it the history of a nation? It's a question about identity, about justice, and about the future. And it comes from a past that is unlike any other state in the Union. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. If you want to dive deeper into the histories of other states, be sure to check out the rest of our U.S. State Histories playlist. And don't forget to subscribe to Notebook Summaries for more breakdowns just like this one.